Hi everybody! Today we're going to be working in this issue of Colouring Heaven. This is Bohemian Beauties Special by DurianAddict AKA T.Fallon, and we're going to be colouring some hair because I know I did have a comment on one of my previous videos that somebody said they wanted to see me focus on a video just colouring hair. So I'm going to be working in this magazine today and doing just that, colouring some hair. But as you can see, we are going to be using some pretty weird colours, and this is because there was a challenge posted on one of the Facebook groups that I belong to, the Colour It In Challenges Facebook group, which I will link below if anybody's interested in joining that. And the challenge was to colour a psychedelic picture. And you could either pick a picture with mushrooms and colour some psychedelic mushrooms, or pick a picture with lots of hair and colour some hair that was psychedelic. And of course, being me, I love to colour my hair and my skin, so I went for the psychedelic hair. And I focused on the psychedelic kind of colour palette that was given as an example. So far, I think I've used most of the colours, but I'll show you how far I've gotten so far. This is the lady that I've picked to colour here. As you can see, there is lots of lovely hair going on here with all the psychedelic colours, and I have used pretty much every colour in the palette, I think, apart from the teal green, and I'm thinking of maybe bringing that in for her makeup. But for today, I'm going to focus on colouring her hair. You can see we have got the pretty wild colours going on here with the pink and the orange and the yellow, and I figured today I could show you how I was going about colouring those and mixing all those together to get this nice kind of, I think it's a nice kind of ombre effect we've got going on there. Maybe it isn't quite exactly what you're asking for with these weird colours, so if you do want me to go ahead and do a video where I colour a more natural colour, hair colour, then drop me a line in the comments and I'll go ahead and see about doing that. But for today, for a little bit of fun, I thought I'd go for this psychedelic picture, which I'm really happy with so far. And yeah, anyone who watches my videos will know that I really don't like colouring patterns, but I have gone ahead and actually coloured this pattern in the background here, just to go with this kind of psychedelic vibe we have going on. Most of the pictures in this magazine are pretty psychedelic, so any of them would have probably done. But we were supposed to pick a portrait kind of style with a head and shoulders and lots of hair, so I think this one fitted in really nicely. I did base the markers a couple of days ago, and this morning I just about had time to go ahead and try to figure out some colours to try and blend into those and make it look like some pretty hair she's got going on there. So I'll zoom us in and we'll colour us some psychedelic hair. Okay, I've zoomed us in so we can see all those lovely bright colours we've got going on there, which was the whole point, to use the kind of psychedelic, really bright poppy colours. And I've coloured her the way that I do normally these days go about colouring. I've given her the marker base. You can see there I've given her the marker base for everything apart from the pattern in the background, which I actually did with glitter gel pens. But I've given the hair a marker base, and I thought first of all I'd go ahead and show you how I was actually doing that and the markers that I used. So it was with the Ohuhu markers. I picked out these colours, a pink, an orange and a yellow. I thought I could keep the warm colours, these into her hair, the pink, the orange and the yellow. As I said, keep the colder blue and purple green into the background to kind of knock that back. And even though it's a busy pattern, hopefully that won't be so distracting, and we'll be focusing on the lady, especially once I actually push myself a little bit and give her a little bit of makeup going on there, maybe bring in that teal green that was also in the palette but I haven't used. But anyways, onto her hair. That's the main point of the video. These are the colours that I've picked out and I was using for basing. I'm not sure if I can get these numbers to focus on the camera, but that is R15 Cerise. I have here the Y10 Apricot, which is a little bit leaky, unfortunately, but we'll go ahead and use that one. And the yellow is G020 Pale Lemon Yellow, which is actually a pretty kind of a highlighter yellow colour, which was actually pretty difficult to find colours to shade on top of it, but I think we've managed it. I think we've got it working pretty much okay there. So I'll go ahead and show you how I was kind of maybe blending these colours a little bit to give this sort of ombre effect, a psychedelic ombre effect we've got going on with her hair. And these colours of markers don't blend super well, but if you are blending two colours of markers, I found, I'm not an expert on blending markers in any sense of the word, but the way I've found that helps to blend markers is to have both of your markers open. So I'm going to open both of these on the brush tip. That way you can quickly switch between them before they actually dry and maybe get a little bit of a blend going on. But I was starting with the pink from the top of her head here to be closest to these cooler colours to give that contrast between the warm and the cool. So I was going in with the pink, which does dry slightly darker, as you can probably see. This is the same pink that I did use there, but it does dry darker than what you actually put it down. And yeah, marker basing, not the most interesting, but I figured I'd leave this in, at least part of it, to show you how I was trying to blend these colours together. And as I was getting down towards where I want the actual blending to maybe happening, I was giving a few little kind of suggestions of these strand lines there, and coming in with the orange, carrying on that kind of strand line sort of effect I want to have going on, and going over this join area with the pink again to try and blend that orange a little bit into the pink. We do go ahead and kind of reinforce that blending a little bit by bringing in the pink pencils over the top with some shading, and I think I've got that working pretty nicely, so I'll show you how I was doing that. And as I said, these are pretty unnatural hair colours, so if anybody does want that video of me showing how I do the more natural hair colour, then yeah, just drop me a line. But yeah, I thought this was pretty fun and kind of interesting, maybe a little bit of entertainment for you guys today. And that's how I was basically trying to blend the two different coloured markers, the pink and the orange in this case, and again the same with the orange and the yellow down the bottom. I'll just go ahead and fill in the rest of this pink hair. As you can see, that marker is darkening there. And I do have the scrap paper behind. As yeah, if you're colouring with markers, the scrap paper is always good to stop the marker bleeding through to the next page, as marker is prone to do. And I'm not the best with laying down flat colours with marker. That might become quite apparent as we go along, but my markers do usually end up looking a little bit streaky. But going ahead and shading on top of that with the pencils, as we can see here, that kind of blends out that streakiness, and we do end up with what looks to be a flat colour in the background, even if it really isn't. We'll be coming in with the pink here again for a fringe, or this part of the front part of her hair. Maybe I should have gone in for the chisel for this part. And as to where to switch colours from the pink to the orange, and from the orange to the yellow, it's no particular formula for that. It was just wherever I thought it would look right. And if a piece of hair was coming up in front, say this piece of hair here is in front here, this will be yellow and that will be orange, just to have a bit of a difference between the colours if they're actually coming up in front of each other. I will kind of try and explain that if we do get onto a little bit more kind of overlapping hair here. And again, trying to bring in the kind of strand lines idea. Switching to the orange while it's hopefully still a little bit wet there. And carrying on that idea of bringing in strand lines, which just makes it a little bit easier to come in with the pencils later, I found anyways, because we can use those marker strand lines and just sort of build on them and have those showing through our pencil shading underneath. Again, trying to blend on top of that with the pink. Just for the areas of colour nearest to this join, so that we have a layer of pink going over that orange to make it kind of a little bit easier to blend the orange into the pink. She says, sounding as if she knows what she's doing. I'm not an expert on blending with actual markers. My technique is usually to go on top with the pencils. We might bring a little bit of the yellow into that tip there, if we can quickly bring that in. There we go, and the technique's the same, going over that area where the colours are joining with the yellow to give a yellowish kind of tone to the orange, hopefully. And yeah, the orange we would go in with there, not the pink. Give the impression of a couple of little strand lines there, just for a difference in the colour. I think this whole area here would probably be the orange. There we go, I filled in that whole strand kind of area there with the orange. I think that would probably all be the orange. But because this strand here is coming up over the top, I'll just make sure that's orange in the background there. And because I have got this yellow coming in onto the ends of her hair, if that's on camera, these ends of her hair here are yellow, bleeding up into the orange, which again blends up into the pink. So this part would be the pink. So I'm going to start down the bottom here with the bit of orange. I'm going to try and blend into that again, giving a few sort of strand lines there, and trying to bring in the yellow before the colour actually dries, so we do have a bit of blending going on this join here, and I'm going over onto the orange a little bit with that yellow, just to give a sort of gradual change in the tint of the orange there, tinting it a little bit yellow, hopefully. And having this yellow strand come up here over the top of the orange, just so that looks a different colour. We can shade that orange darker behind it and have the bright yellow coming up into the kind of foreground there. And there we go, show that having that, because that strand is overlapping there, I tried to make that a different colour. We can see I've also done it down here. I've got this strand coming in with the yellow, so it goes on top of that orange, and we can have a difference in colour there to make the strands look separate and make this one look as if it is coming into the front. Sort of the same here, we've got the pink coming up over the front of that orange there, just to differentiate between the two different strands, to show that this one is a little bit closer, that orange would be further away. Again, I'm not the neatest, I've just gone over her skin there with the orange a little tiny bit, but I'm thinking that I could go, I'll probably go over that with the white gel pen just to give a little bit of highlight to that shoulder and get rid of that little mistake there. I did notice earlier, there is a part here that would probably be black. This would probably be the black that I used in the background there, but when I was doing the background I did that with the black acrylic marker, just my cheap acrylic marker from B&M that you've probably seen me use a couple of times. I did most of this black in the background with that acrylic marker, and I did find that when I came to here where I was trying to colour the yellow, and at the side of the black there I was trying to colour the yellow, you can maybe see on camera that has smudged a little bit there into the actual yellow, so this acrylic marker was actually smudging into the alcohol markers, which is why I ended up colouring that pattern in the background with the gel pens. But yeah, I'm leaving that. The point being, I'm rambling again, the point being, if there's any parts that I think maybe should be black, there's one there and possibly one here, or maybe there should be skin colour, I'm not sure, but anything that's going to be black I'm going to be leaving because of the bleeding. Yeah, I don't really want that black to be bleeding into my colours if I can possibly help it. The orange and the yellow I need to have with the lids off now, so I can figure out where the yellow actually comes into this orange here. So I'm thinking that where this hair comes out across over the front of our lady here, that's where our yellow should be coming in. So I'll go ahead and colour the orange up to about where I think that yellow should come in. I have stuck on some stick-on crystals, you might be able to see on the other side, I'm not sure if that's on camera at the moment. I've stuck on here some stick-on crystals, just to go ahead with that kind of wacky, psychedelic vibe we're going for here. Going a little bit crazy with this, having a bit of fun. And it has been pretty fun so far actually, even though I was colouring a pattern, and that's not usually the thing that I like to do, but yeah, I went ahead and I coloured that pattern. Had a bit of fun with it. So you can see I've tried to do a few strand lines there with the orange. And I'm coming in with the yellow now. Trying to blend in that yellow, going over a little bit of the orange, just to give that kind of yellower tone to it. And giving a few of those strand lines. Kind of roughly, we can go in over the top with pencil. And adjust that out until we're happy with it. But there we go, that's how I was bringing in the markers there and getting those to transition into each other. So I'll go ahead now and fill in the rest of the marker base so that we can move on and show you how I was actually doing the pencil shading over the top. There we go, I've gone ahead and filled in all the marker basing there. Trying to bring in a few of those sort of vague strand lines in whenever the colours are blending into each other. And trying to bring in two different colours when two strands of hair are crossing each other. So now we'll go on to actually shading, and hopefully you'll be able to see on the camera there that this yellow is more of a highlighter yellow than anything. Hopefully that's coming up on the camera because my camera doesn't really like yellow, never shows up really well, but yeah, this yellow is more of a highlighter yellow. That's what I tried to stick to, the kind of highlighter colours. We're going to go in there with the shading now. And I found that especially on these slightly more mid-tone or darker colours, you can shade on top with the white to add in some highlights. So my light would be coming from the right here because this lady does have a 3/4 face. And I know I keep going on about that 3/4 face. What that means is when she's very slightly turned, but not all the way, she's not quite in profile, completely sideways, she's sort of halfway. So that's what 3/4 face means. And I'm going to have my light coming from the right because that's where the most area of her face is. That's just the way I like to do my shading. I find that quite relaxing and fun. So I'm going to have my light coming from this side. But the point, yeah, I'm rambling again. But the point is that you can shade on top of these markers. Hopefully that is coming through on the screen there. You can come in with the white polychromos to add in your white highlights. I do like to bring in the white pencil if I'm going to be bringing in the white gel pen on top. I'm not sure if it quite stops the colour bleeding through, as this pink would very well bleed through the white gel pen. It hasn't here that I did earlier, so hopefully this is helping a little bit to stop that. But if you do go ahead with the white gel pen, I think that helps if you are going to bring in the white pencil underneath. And if you are going to bring in the white pencil underneath, it's best to do that before you bring in the shading with the pencils, because once you go in with your darker colour pencils, it's quite hard to go on top of them with the white. So the first thing I would do is go ahead and add in some highlights with this white pencil, especially on this side of her face, because that's where I do have my light coming from. So on the other side of her head, there would be less white highlights in theory. And I was going just along the edge of each of the strands. There are strands of hair drawn here in the actual line art. You can see that there's lots of strands of hair drawn out actually for us there. So I'm going ahead and following those. I'll just switch us sideways a little so we can actually see what we're doing here. And yeah, first things first, I'm going in with the white over the pink and the orange, as we can see there. And especially on the edges of these strands are actually coming out and being over on top of the other strands. Those would be catching more light, so making sure those have got the edge highlights going on. And I haven't actually yet tried blending this orange into the pink, but we will try right now. I'm trying to stick with my Arteza pencils for this. And for each of the different hair colours, I've got maybe 3 or 4 different colours that I'm coming in and shading with. So as we're going to be working here, that is on the camera, we're going to be working here. So I'll show you the colours I've been using to shade the pink and the orange. Here we go, these are all Arteza, mainly because these have really nice, bright, saturated colours in the Arteza pencil. So these are the colours I've tried to stick with. And for the orange, I'm shading with these ones here. This is Vermillion A115, Blood Orange A114. We have Orange A173, I'm not entirely sure, it could be A113, but I will look these up and put them in the description below. And there we have Pumpkin Orange, that's A112, so orange is probably A113, going by that logic. And for the pink, we have Peony Pink, which is A401. We have Fruit Punch, which is A405. And this one is probably the next darkest, so we'll put that one there. That is the Plum, A051 or A001. Again, it's hard to see these numbers, but I will pop them in the description. And this one is Rose Red, which I was bringing in for the dark shadows. And for the very, very, very dark shadows, in these bits behind her ears here, for this little bit here, just a very, very slight touch of Wine Red A415. But that's just for the very, very dark shadows if I felt I needed it. So let's see if we can blend this orange into the pink. This is the Pumpkin Orange. Just very lightly, not bothering to do any strand lines or anything, just coming in with the Pumpkin Orange to try and blend that orange into the pink. And my theory is if I go fairly lightly, I should be able to come over the top with the darker colours for the strand lines. That's not doing too badly, blending in there. And the lightest pink is the Peony Pink, which is the closest to the actual marker colour. So I'll come in with that and add in a little bit of that to try and blend these colours together smoothly, because you want quite smooth transitions in this hair. Kind of like a three-way sort of ombre. I'm not 100% sure of the terminology, but we are, yeah, I'm coming from pink to orange to yellow. Sort of an ombre, but with 3 colours. Is it still an ombre? I have no idea. But I think that's blending quite nicely there. Yep, That's not too bad at all. I quite like the way that's doing there. We're going into a more sort of peachy colour where these two colours are mixing together. So it's giving us another layer to our little colour palette. This peach isn't really in the colour palette, but we could go with it, I think, if those colours are mixing. So to start with this pink, I'm going in with the plum. And that's always sometimes I'm a bit lost for words when it comes to trying to explain how I do things, but hopefully you can see on camera there what I am actually doing and it makes sense. Trying to bring in a few strand lines, because hair, even though we are dealing with quite big shapes of hair, sort of chunks of hair here, we are made up of like lots of little individual hairs, so we want to give the kind of impression that there's lots of individual hairs without really drawing them all in laboriously. So kind of strand lines like this give the impression there's chunks or little strands of hair overlaying each other that's making up this big shape. Again, sounding like I know what I'm doing. But as I said, on the camera you should hopefully be able to see what I am doing here and how I'm actually doing it. And any different kind of colour hair I would do exactly the same way. We're just having a little bit of fun with the psychedelic colours here. And as always, I will be bringing in that white gel pen, especially on these edges where I have put in the white pencil. There we go. I think that is working pretty nicely to get those colours blending into each other there. This one was called Peony. Yeah, Peony Pink, this one. Let me bring that down into the orange some way. I can't actually see my screen, so hopefully I am actually on screen. There might be a little bit of a lighting change there. I've just moved the phone camera a little bit further down so I can actually see the screen. See if I'm actually on screen. I know I do have difficulty actually staying on camera at the best of times, and when I can't see the screen, yeah, that would be nigh on impossible. So I've just moved the camera a little bit further down here so I can see what I'm doing. Okay, that's not looking too bad. This is just an orange. Again, trying to blend that orange into the pink. And I'll bring in the wine red just for these parts that are very close to her head, just to emphasize those strand lines a little bit. Let's come in with the orange colors now. So this is a blood orange, one of the darker orange colors. And the same as the pink, we're just trying to bring in a few strand lines, bit of a definition to show there is a lot of strands here all kind of bunched together, but making up the bigger shapes of the hair. And we're bringing in a bit of shadow towards the ends of these strands here because they are curving around, and we want to make it look as if these strands do have a bit of shape to them. Underneath here would be the darker colours, as we are underneath this wider strand here. So we want to make that look further away, so we're going to use the darker colours and not as much detail or contrast in there to make it look further into the shadows. Oh, that's better. I forgot I did come in with this rose red, is it called? Yeah, rose red. I did come in with that for the furthest areas of, or the darkest areas rather, of the pink. And yeah, we can see, hopefully that's making a slight difference there. And I think we've got those colours blending pretty nicely. This is the Vermillion, again that's a darker colour of orange. Just trying to make this kind of section here look way into the shadows. Come in with the wine red. In this section, as we are inside in the shadows, and you see that I'm just adding in a few extra strand lines, just playing really, putting a few extra strand lines in just for fun. And we're going to make sure this area under here is dark. And if I was about to tell you something else there, I've completely forgotten it, so sorry about that. I do love carving hair, so I will tend to get a little bit carried away here. A little bit too interested in what I'm doing. Let's bring in this rose red. Okay, how are we looking? That's looking pretty good, I think. So I'll go ahead there and add in a few of the white gel pen highlights. Mainly where I already put this white pencil. That will hopefully stop the colour bleeding through. And these will go on the edges where the light would probably be hitting the most. So the bits where the hair is curving up and out and would actually be closer to us. That's where the light would be hitting. So that's where I put in the white highlights. And as usual, I tend to go for kind of a longish line with a few little dots to look like maybe sparkles maybe. We can see hopefully there the darker shadows going further away from us and then the lighter colours coming out towards us with these sparkly highlights kind of on the hitting the top of the curl as it just starts to curve away there. We're going back underneath a lot more hair there. So we'll bring in highlights here on this curl as we get further onto there. We'll maybe have a little bit here because the background there is black, so to bring in white will give us a nice bit of contrast and actually bring that hair out towards us, I think. So yeah, we're looking pretty good there. And that's working a lot better than I'd hoped actually, because I hadn't tried actually blending the orange into the pink. I tried blending the orange into the yellow, which was going quite well, so yeah, I was quite happy with that. And I did toy with the idea of glitter, but I haven't really got, the only glitter glue I've got that's orange is cheap glitter glue that's quite watery, and I didn't really want the page warping. So yeah, I did play with that idea, decided against it. I also played with the idea of bringing in the glitter gel pens, but I thought maybe we'll leave those in the background. With those cooler colours in the background, because that seems to be working quite well. Hopefully not glaring too much there. And this is actually the blood orange, because this piece of her hair would be in the shadow of this one. If we're saying a light is coming here, this kind of direction, sort of, maybe a little bit towards top right, but not too much. So this piece of hair will be casting a shadow underneath here. So you want to bring that in pretty dark. I'll probably be coming in with the wine red there. And I am adding in a few of my own little strand lines there that are not part of what the actual line art is giving me. So I tend to colour the same way pretty much if there is line art or if there isn't. I put in my own little strand lines. You don't need tons of them. As I said, it's just an impression. You want to give the impression that there's lots of little hairs laying on top of each other to give the big shapes. Again, as this piece is kind of in the shadows, maybe further away, we're not going to have too much contrast here, because the contrast is what makes things, brings things further towards us, brings them out of the shadows. Anything's in the shadows, it won't have too many highlights and there won't be much contrast. You won't be able to see so much difference between the actual colours. This is the pumpkin orange. I haven't brought in the white pencil there because, as I said, that is in the shadow, so we won't really have that much light getting to it. And we're going to go in there now with the wine red. Instead of bringing in a grey or a black for the shadows, I've gone for this wine red, which is a really, really deep dark red. For the pink and for the orange, I figured this would be a good colour to come in and shade a few little shadows there for the main kind of areas of shadow. And I was also coming in with the vermilion. We don't want our strand lines to be super defined here in the shadows, so we're not going for super definition like we have up here. Just an impression. Hopefully that's all making sense. But as I said, yeah, you can actually see what I'm doing. Again, here we're blending the orange into the pink. I'm coming in with the peony pink here. Going over our strand lines that we drew with the marker pen. Bringing those out and blending more into the pink colour. Going over the orange a little bit, making it turn a bit more of a peachy colour and blending nicely into that pink. So as you can see, yeah, we are blending these colours together so it doesn't stay such a sharp kind of contrast there between the two colours. We are blending them in quite nicely just by working on top with the pencil. And this strand of hair would have a lot more highlights because we are really kind of curving out away from the head there. So right at the front of all the strands we've got going on. I'm trying to leave a highlight along the bottom edge as well, even if I don't go over that with the white pen. Maybe just to emphasize that, I'll come in and put a little bit of a white pencil there, because we want a difference between this strand that's up, kind of flowing up and billowing up over the top there, and this dark kind of orange we'll have going on underneath. Bringing in a few of those strand lines. They will probably be, the strand lines probably be more well defined on the strands that are coming up closer towards us. There will be more detail in there. And further back, as we can see here, they're all blending in into the darker colours, so not so well defined. I will try not to cut out super much. I want you all to be able to see how I'm actually doing this, because as I said, I probably will tend to get carried away when I'm colouring hair. I do love colouring hair. And skin, so yeah, portraits are one of my favourite things to colour. So I jumped at this challenge when it was posted. Hopefully it will fit, because the hair is the main point of doing psychedelic hair, is the main point of the challenge, and I've only actually used 3 colours, but hopefully if I bring in the teal, I have got the cooler colours in the background. Hopefully 3 colours like this counts as psychedelic. I would hope so. It looks pretty psychedelic to me. Adhesive pencils are possibly not the 100% best choice for colouring hair because they're quite hard to keep sharp. They are fairly soft. Not as soft as something like Prismacolors probably, but yeah, they're fairly hard to keep sharp. And this is the peony pink, if I didn't mention that. Which is kind of nearly the same sort of colour as the actual marker we have underneath there. And hopefully these colours are showing up as bright and neon as they actually are in real life. As always, I will adjust the colours in editing if they're not, just to show you how bright and neon these colours are actually looking here. Let's bring in a tiny little bit of the wine red in this darker area here. And this is where the strand is just starting to kind of turn away from the light, so we're going to have a little bit more of the darker colours inside here. I'm probably getting a little bit carried away. I should be going on and showing you how I'm blending the yellow into the orange. We will get onto that, honest people. A little bit of the rose red again in these darkest areas. Maybe clashes a tiny little bit with that pink, but I think that enhances the sort of psychedelic, trippy sort of vibe we're going for here. And this artist, DurianAddict or T.Fallon, she has got a few colouring books, I think, on Amazon called Trippy Chicks. So yeah, most of her art is this kind of psychedelic, sort of trippy art, which is why I picked it to go for this challenge, even though Jasmine Beckett Griffith is my artist of choice for this month. Having a little bit of a break for this challenge isn't a terrible thing. I would say guidelines more than rules. Let's blend a little with this peony pink. Blend that red in here. Okay. I think we can live with that. I'll come in with some white highlights. This is, as I've said, the area of her hair that is closest to where I've decided my light is coming from. And that's a general rule of thumb. If you decide where your light is coming from in your picture. Anything that's closest to it will be lighter, will have more highlights. Anything that's further away, darker, not as many highlights. There will be a few, but yeah, in general, anything closer to the light would have the more highlights. Okay, maybe a tiny bit along this bottom edge just to contrast it with the shadow underneath. Okay, and you can see I'm keeping the highlights to the edges of these kind of strands that were drawn in with the line art. That's where I'm putting the highlights in. Just neaten off that white there a little bit. Make sure there's not as much contrast in this little shadowy area. Although I might bring in a little bit of highlight along this edge, again to make it look different from the darker shadowy area that's underneath that really could do with being a little bit darker. So I'll come in with that wine red there. There we go, that's looking better. Maybe we need a little bit of the rose red as well. Probably not as precise or as neat as I would usually be colouring hair, but it's kind of awkward trying to do this on camera, angle myself around the tripod, be able to see what I'm doing. I'm a lot further away than I would usually be, because I don't really want to be getting my head in the camera. Just finish up this orange here before I quickly go on to show you how I was blending the orange into the yellow. And I think I'll probably do that on this strand over here. It's probably the easiest, but the idea is the same as I've done down here, blending the orange into the yellow and keeping this whole idea of the strands going on. Let's add a little bit of white here. There won't be any white gel pen down in this area, that will be in the shadow, but I do want these strands to look as if they are crisscrossing a little bit there. This is blood orange. We have the orange blending into the pink up here, but just using the darkest colours, which do seem to be fairly close to each other. So that is the blood orange. We have some fruit punch. And as usual, as always, my order of using colours is probably different every time I do each different strand of hair, except for the first darkest colour I go in with the strand lines. Usually I just pick a set of colours and then play around with them, layer them, do the strand lines, all that different stuff, until I'm happy with what is actually going on. So if I use colours in a slightly different order, then that's just usually the way that I work. So yeah, that's my usual working method. Just playing with the colours, keeping the strand line kind of idea going on without going too over the top with the lots and lots of feathery strands. You really don't need that, especially if it's a picture with a smaller area of hair. And even a picture like this, most people are going to be looking at it from a further distance than you do, because you have to get fairly close to colour it in. So most people are going to be looking from a further away distance. So we're going more for an impression of lots of strands or different hairs coming together to make the strands, rather than being really, really meticulous in detail. So that's how I was doing the orange and the pink. I will move on now to show you the colours I was using to shade the yellow. And as I said, I'll probably use this strand here as we are coming up in front of the orange there. You should be able to see what I'm actually doing with the yellow. And this yellow is fairly light. As I said, it's kind of a highlighter yellow. Really kind of luminous, vibrant yellow. I'm not sure if it's showing up properly on the camera. My camera really doesn't like yellow very much at all. But as it's such a kind of pale yellow, I will show you that using the white on top, yeah, really isn't showing super well there. I will do a tiny little bit just because I will be coming in with the white gel pen. And I'm not entirely sure if this yellow will bleed through into the white gel pen, but just to be sure, I will come in with the white to maybe try and help guard against that. Give a little bit of a base from a white gel pen. And these are the yellows I was using. Again, I'm sticking with the Arteza pencils. I apologise for the neighbours in the background there if you can hear any noise outside. They're busy with their cars out there. But these are the yellow colours I was using. This is Lemon Yellow A104. This one is called Sapphire Yellow, I think. That is A101. This one is called Burnt Ochre. I'm not entirely sure what the number is for that, but I will look that up and put it in the description. And this one is called Sunflower Yellow, and that is a 106. These are yellows I was using to kind of shade this yellow. It's kind of a tough yellow to be shading, this one. My darkest of the yellow shades is this Sunflower Yellow, so I'll come in with that first to help try and give a little bit of a transition into the orange. It was quite hard to do, this one. I'm not entirely sure this is the entirely best way to do it, but yeah, I was coming in with that Sunflower Yellow, and I was actually bringing in the pumpkin orange that I was using to shade on the orange, just to extend these kind of strand lines a little bit, blend them in. We are sort of enhancing the strand lines here rather than blending in the colours into each other. As I said, this yellow was quite hard to actually blend in. I should have maybe picked a darker one, but my markers are running out. The yellows I do use quite a lot. This is the Sunflower Yellow. Again, apologies for the neighbours there. They do love to slam their car doors, and it's always when I'm filming. But there we go, that's a Sunflower Yellow. And the Sapphire Yellow is quite a pale yellow that I can actually bring over into the orange a little bit. And blend out that yellow. I was leaving a lot more of the base colour actually showing when I was colouring the yellow. You can see maybe on this strand over here, I'm leaving quite a lot of the base colour showing through there. And I'm using the white gel pen to cover up any blobs that have gone over the edge there, just to neaten up. I'm just coming in with that pumpkin yellow there and just using it without any strand lines, just as a little bit of colour to shade over the top of that Sunflower Yellow. Blend in the strand lines a little bit, but we're still carrying them on rather than blending them in as we did here. The colours blended a lot better up there. But I think there we go, that's working. That's working quite well there. So I'll carry on and shade the rest of this yellow. This is a Sunflower Yellow first. Again, emphasising these strand lines, as I would if I was doing any different colour of hair. This bit would be in the shadow here, behind that curl that's coming up over the top there. A shadow would be underneath here. And because we're going on top of that orange, this would be a lot darker under here, like we've got going on here. You can see that. If we make the orange quite dark underneath this kind of yellow curl we've got going on, then that would work quite nicely to push this curl forward with the dark behind it. And for the very darkest shadows of the yellow is quite hard to shade, but I'm going in with this Burnt Ochre, which is a sort of a tan brown. Just for the darkest areas. I haven't brought in the wine red to shade on top of the yellow because I thought maybe that would look a bit too different to the yellow and we'd have a bit too much contrast going on there, and that would look a little bit silly maybe. Now we're coming in with the lemon yellow. Again, following the strand lines we've got going on, actually drawn for us. This strand of hair is going to be pretty light, even though we're on the darkest side of her actual face. We have a little bit of a darker, little bit of a strand there, so I'll just come in with the darkest colours. That would be, what is that dark yellow called? That is the Sunflower Yellow, and this is the Burnt Ochre. Just for a little bit of shadow. Sunflower Yellow there. And yeah, any order, use the colours. Just play around. Find out what you can make work. That's usually my method, is just play around until it actually works. And then go ahead and put in the white highlight, especially, as you might have been able to see there, covering up where the marker basing isn't the neatest, because yeah, I'm not known for being neat. And white gel pen does cover up a lot of little blobby edges. Okay, that was a little bit of a pumpkin orange. And now I'm coming in with this sapphire yellow, which is the lightest yellow. Just going to blend in those colours a little bit. We're going to blend down here. We'll start using the normal colours that we're using to shade the orange. And this is the blood orange. I'm just leaving off the pressure a little bit to taper off into those more yellowy oranges I've got coming up on the edge of the strand there. That's blending into the yellow. And as that strand is coming up, kind of floating up here, I'll pop in a little bit of a highlight along this bottom edge, just as we did down here, a little bit of a highlight on the bottom edge there. I'm just going to pop a little bit of one in there, just so it stands out a little bit more from the darkest orange we're going to be putting underneath there. And the wine red for where this strand, a lock of hair comes up behind her shoulder there. Putting in a few extra strand lines just to give the impression. We want to give a bit of an impression that there's lots of different locks or strands of hair coming up there to make up the big shape. Pumpkin orange. Just to go over that red, I think maybe we've gone a little bit dark because this strand is supposed to be quite near to the front. But we can adjust, we can erase, we can add more layers that we need. Just keep going until we're happy. I will add in a little bit of white gel pen here. A little bit of vermilion maybe. Yep, that's it. That's what we needed. We needed the vermilion to kind of blend in that wine red a little bit. That's it. And there we go. I don't want this video to be dragging on. It's super long. I don't want to edit too much out because it's a lot easier for me to show you how I actually go ahead and do this kind of stuff instead of trying to explain, because I get tied up in my words and not really able to explain what I'm doing. I want you to be able to actually see what I'm doing and just yeah, maybe get the general idea of how I go about things. Obviously behind here would be a lot darker. Behind her head and her chin there would be dark because of the way the light's coming, and to emphasize this strand of hair kind of blowing around there. And I better stop there before I get carried away and colour the whole thing on camera. I don't want this video to be really dragging along. I wanted it to be kind of a quick overview of how I do colour hair, with keeping the strand lines kind of showing. It's a lot easier to show on this side maybe. The yellow's a bit too light. But the strand lines I kind of put in with a darker shade of colour. Maybe a few more with a kind of mid-tone. Keeping the lighter colours for the areas where we are coming out into the light. I bring in the white highlights on the areas that are closest to where our source of light actually is, which for me at this point would be kind of about maybe here-ish, coming from the right and slightly towards the top, but not so far as to be from the top. So to kind of sum up how I do go about colouring hair, as I don't want the video to drag along, as I've been saying. More often than not, I will put down a marker base if I'm going to be colouring hair, because colouring without a marker base is a lot more labour intensive. But again, if you would like to see me colour hair without a marker base, then do drop me a comment and I will get ahead and film that. But for this one, I did my usual method, which is picking a marker base and laying all that down first. This one is slightly more complicated, as we did have the 3 different colours for the psychedelic hair we've got going on here. Usually it would just be the one flat colour that I would use. I would pick a few shades of coloured pencils. I think in this case I picked maybe 3 or 4 different colour pencils that matched with the shade of marker for each different colour, the pink, the orange and the yellow. I start with one of the darker coloured pencils, not the darkest, one of the darker tones, and maybe put in a few extra strand lines and try and keep my strokes of the pencil all going the same way along the strand of hair. I lighten off the colours and lighten off the pressure as we come up this strand towards the areas that would be closest to the light. You could leave the light, if you were working without a marker base, you could leave the white of the paper coming through here and make it look even more kind of feathery hair going on. But as we're working with the marker base, we're just lining off the pressure, lining off the colours as we come towards here. And because we are working with the marker base, I bring in the white highlights with the white gel pen. I do tend to use that if I am just using pencil on its own as well, but using the white of the paper is kind of a lot easier to do when you are just working with pencils. So maybe that could, yeah, maybe that will be another video at another point in time, but I was keen to be working on this challenge today, so that's what I figured I'd try and show you. And that's about it, really. Hopefully being able to watch how I actually do it is a lot better than trying to listen to me explain. So I will zoom us out and we'll be able to look at the picture as a whole. There we go. I think I've got most of the picture on the camera there. And you can see the effect that we've been working on here. We're showing the strands of hair, not as visible from a distance. We're just trying to give that impression that there's lots of strands of hair, lots of different hairs making up these bigger shapes. And from a distance, you can just see the bigger shapes of the hair. So that's what we want to concentrate on, but just give a few indications that we do have all these different hairs going on here. Of course, that's the way that I work on doing hair. You can really go into detail with your strands and your kind of feathery strokes to give that hair texture, but I tend to keep it fairly minimal. Work on showing the big shapes rather than going into the individual little hairs, because as I said, most people would be looking from a further away distance than you do. You have to be fairly close to be colouring it in, but most people look at it from a further distance. And from a further distance, you can't see any of those little individual strokes. You need to really zoom in or look really, really closely to be able to see anything like that. So I tend to keep it more to being able to give a nice effect from a distance is the way that I usually work on it. And yeah, hopefully that has been at least a little bit entertaining for you guys. I probably will go ahead and do another video, or maybe another few videos showing how I do different colours of hair. I do have another couple of videos showing how I colour hair. I think there's one for blonde hair and one for black hair, both using a marker base. I haven't really done one showing how I colour hair without a marker base, so that might be an idea for a future video, I think. I do usually use a marker base, mainly for quickness, so I don't have to try and cover all the tooth of the paper. But yeah, I will try and do a video showing how I colour hair without markers. This one is with markers though, and hopefully it's been at least a little bit entertaining for you guys. You've enjoyed following along. If you have enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing. Take care, and I'll see you in future videos. Bye!